And I'm joined in the studio by culture editor Eve Jackson. Eve, great to see you. The queen of pop. Madonna is in town for 4 shows this week, 2 this week, 2 next week. You've gone on opening night. How was it?
Well, Delano, I've been a fan of Madonna for as long as I can remember, and at 65, she has still got it. She totally blew me and the other 20,000 people in Paris's Accor Arena away. She is still the highest grossing touring female performer of all time. More than an hour and a half late, however, on stage.
I wouldn't expect any better.
Well, you know what? It wasn't her fault. She came on and apologised, saying it wasn't her fault for once. It was due to a technical problem. But it also meant that most people who left that arena at midnight, past midnight, missed the last metro home. But they didn't mind. She was on stage for 2.5 hours, and it was an emotional journey through some of her biggest hits. She appeared on stage looking the best she has in years, and sounding it too, despite just a few months ago when she was in hospital with a bacterial infection which made her postpone the show. Here she was looking amazing, and she kicked off with this. It's called Nothing Really Matters, and it's from her 1998 album Ray of Light.
Now, I'm going to see Madonna next week, and I remember the tickets were pretty pricey, about over 200 euros per ticket.
Between 200 and 400 euros.
So is it worth it?
I think so. At the beginning of the show, she said this was the story of her life, and it certainly was. She performed all of the big hits, almost all of the big hits. Her debut single, Everybody, as well as most of the biggies, Into the Groove and Crazy for You. The evening's most powerful moment, I think, came just after her hit Holiday, which was a nod to the 80s, and there were giant banners filled the stage showing images of figures who had died back in New York in the 80s in the AIDS crisis. And there was a real sense of heart behind the show, which I think is different than previous tours she's been on. She was surprisingly warm and often very funny. Her 3 children also took part, singing, dancing, even playing instruments. Her dancing capabilities, of course, are a little more limited. She is 65. But you know what? Given the vigour of the backing dancers, it really was a non-issue. And this is Don't Tell Me.
Now, we know Madonna's always a little bit risque, but was the show raunchy?
Well, what can I say? She's true to herself. There was a sexy rendition of Like a Prayer, then Erotica, that saw her with shirtless hunks in a boxing ring. Next, she moved to a bed for Justify My Love, where she wore lingerie and bondage gear with a female dancer in a gimp mask, which was a nod, of course, to her 1990 Blonde Ambition tour. You might remember Pope John Paul famously branded that one of the most satanic shows in the history of humanity. Madonna was, of course, the first person to bring female pleasure into the conversation. It is part of her brand. Overall, Delano, this was a mesmerising choreography with the most incredible, bold costumes. And, of course, Frenchman Jean-Paul Gaultier designed the outfits she wore for her rendition of Vogue, recreating his famous cone bra. I'm so jealous that you have got this yet to come.
I do.
Next week, the Celebration Tour has nearly 80 dates. Madonna has 2 left here in Paris. Then she moves through Europe, and then she'll go back to New York, where she kicks off the leg of her North American tour.
Next year. Thank you very much for that, Eve. Eve Jackson. No, actually, you're staying with us.
I am.
You have one more thing left. I thought it was just Madonna today. But you might as well be, right? You interviewed the best pastry chef in the world.
I know, imagine, best pastry in the world, not just in France, the best pastry in the world, and she's based just down the road from these studios. It was a historic event, actually, in the world of dessert. For the first time ever, the prize for best pastry chef has been given to a woman by the International Union of Bakers and Pastry Chefs, Nina Matea. She is based by these studios. You can pop out in your lunch break and get one of these cakes. And she popped in and she brought some cakes for us to try, to our delight. Here she is in action, making her own version of France's traditional galette de roi. And you can watch the whole show and our tasting with Nina Matea at 5:15 Paris time.
Eve, thank you very much for that. Eve Jackson there with the culture news on the program. More news coming up with me. Stay with us.